But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The words of Founding Father Thomas Jefferson, when we, ironically, were casting off bounds that were coming out of the UK. Not Ireland, of course, speaking with regard to the British Empire, but how interesting that not just Britain, although nanny state Britain, terrible example, but all of Europe has fallen under that long train of abuses and usurpations. The leaders of the indigenous peoples of Europe have abandoned their people. They have abandoned their nation. They have abandoned their culture. They have abandoned their roots. They have abandoned all pretense of being anything but globalists. They have abandoned all pretense of any desire for protection of their people. And as Jefferson said, and as we as Americans followed, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Examine, please, the city of Dublin, Ireland, on fire. Now, of course, if this were left-wing Antifa maggots here in the United States, this would be described as a fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Instead, quite the opposite. A Muslim immigrant, let me say that again, a Muslim immigrant, one more time for those in the back with the coexist bumper stickers, a Muslim immigrant in Dublin, Ireland, stabbed women and children. And the immediate reaction from the Irish leadership, not only the government, but the Ministry of so-called Justice, was to be worried about the backlash against, you guessed it, Muslim immigrants. A pattern that we have seen over and over and over again. Deny the irrefutable increase of violence with an influx of savages incompatible with Western civilization, the crimes that they wreak upon said civilization and its inhabitants. And the concern of the leadership is about the backlash against the perpetrators. Ponder that for a second. It took them over 2 days to release the ethnicity of the man responsible for the stabbing attack, even though they had him in custody and knew from day one. Meanwhile, Reuters and the BBC continued to insist that the real problem was right-wing speculation about the ethnicity. That right-wing radicalization online was responsible for the riots, not the fact that people are fed up with the very souls that they count on for protection, abandoning them for the sake of an influx of savages. I've said time and time again that eventually we would get to a point where good people have had enough. The thing about the peoples of Britannia and Northern Europe and Eastern Europe, Europeans across the board, this is to avoid saying white people because of the political implications. We are a very tolerant people. But as one of our own representatives, G.K. Chesterton, famously said, tolerance is the virtue of the man without convictions. Chesterton went on to say that a civilization has descended into depravity when tolerance itself becomes a virtue without regard to what is being tolerated. We're being gaslit on a daily basis, told to ignore the evidence of our own eyes and ears. You're waiting for me to post an Orwell quote. I'm going to disappoint you. Fooled you, made you look. We are gaslit on a daily basis, taught to ignore the evidence of our own eyes and ears. It is the party's final and most fundamental command. And who are we to process it anyway? Just a bunch of simple-minded deplorables. That's how the herd is programmed to think of us. Sadly, a number of us live up to that expectation and never try to rise above it. But even assuming that we had made the attempt, and even assuming that we were successful in that attempt, the perception is always going to be there. We are simple, dumb folk, ignorant hillbillies. Sadly, it really comes down to a simple sentiment. All of those simple-minded hillbillies, just like a lot of other people throughout history, they just wanted to be left alone. But now we have reached that tipping point where it is far, far too late to express that sentiment. And even if it were expressed, no one on the other side is listening, and the evidence of that can no longer be ignored. But of course we would feel that way, being the simple-minded hillbilly idiots that we are. Those desperate clingers to guns and religion. It's easy for the intellectual class to look down on folks like us. Sad to say, but in the interest of honesty, a lot of times it's even warranted. But in retort, I would like to point out the words of a man whose intellect is beyond question and a pioneering psychonaut and personal hero of mine, Aldous Huxley. For those that thump their chest and think themselves smarter than us low-life deplorables and the hillbillies they continue to gaslight, Huxley said the course, and this is one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I'm sorry for beating it to death yet again, but damn it, it hits. The course of every intellectual, if he pursues his journey long and unflinchingly enough, ends in the obvious, a position from which the non-intellectuals have never stirred. This is why it is so important for them to gaslight us. This is why it is so vitally important to control of the narrative, to insist that we trick ourselves, that we abandon discernment, that we abandon the evidence, as Orwell said, of our own eyes and ears, because it is very obvious where they are. They want to condemn us for being rooted in our backward folk traditions. But let me throw this one out for you. Tradition is not the worship of ashes. It is the preservation of fire. For those that seek to undermine Western civilization, for those that seek to undermine my blood, my people, my culture, my faith, and the civilization that has been created by all of the above, I urge you to step back, because we do just want to be left alone. And if you continue on this path, you are not ready for the unleashing of the fire which we have preserved. God help you. You will find no mercy here. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and, even though I'm currently without one, certainly not employers. They've been adjudicated thought crime in all known jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to take a Halligan tool, a pry bar, and a horse speculum, stretch that maw, and choke you with a throbbing dose of truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. I know at least one guy is laughing about the horse speculum reference. I'm not going to out him, and I'm not going to ask him to out himself. I'm just going to let it ride. In the meantime, in between time, let's see who's on board. Everybody in for the drum roll, please. Yes, sir. Feeling pretty charged up, coming hard, charging out of the starting gate as we always do with the bumper music from the gut stomping rock and roll band Red Desert from the smoldering embers and ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. Let's see how this one turns out, man. I really appreciate those guys from Red Desert. You guys should check them out, buy their merch, man. Download some of their music. Fantastic dudes, and they've been really, really cool about letting me use that track as bumper music pretty much as long as we've been doing this little thing. And hadn't stuck me for copyright or anything, man. I'm pretty happy about that. So anyway, worth checking out. Let's go ahead and jump back in here. Let's do a little roll call real quick. See which one of the usual suspects are on board. Of course, the original Sinner Sister herself, Miss Emmy, on early. Roman, of course. Brother Roman, good to see you. Good to see you. And of course, I'm sure he is joined by his lovely wife, Carrie. Probably hell, one of these days we'll even get some of the ladies on. From Dork to Pimp Daddy is the name of the book. We're going to be giving that a little plug here in a minute. Brother Clem, relax, breathe. Thank you. I can hear you on the winds, Clem. I'm taking it, man. Brother Bill Wade, good to see you, man. Good to see you. I don't know if you caught the replay from last week, man. That book, Live Not by Lies, I devoured it, man. I absolutely devoured it. And then I went and downloaded the audio book. So when I went on this last crane gig down to Texas, it was like constantly in my head. Outstanding recommendation, brother. Thank you so much for the gift. Brother Bill Wade on board. Brother Joel Allen Jackson up in the breadbasket in Ohio. Look at this, saying hi to everyone. Let me see who else we got. Clem, Joel, and of course, yes, Brother Ryan, or what's going on in France with the farmers. And it's not just France, man. It's all over. I mean, we're looking at it in Sweden. We're looking at it in Scandinavia. The drive is on. We're in that perpetual race between enlightenment and catastrophe. And right now it's looking, as I've said, ad infinitum, that it will take a catastrophe to lead us to enlightenment. And if that's the case, bro, I'm totally here for it. I just say it's time to get it on. Ryan, we just had this discussion the other night, man. Brother Jude, happy birthday, man. Good to see you, my brother. Deacon Mark on board. Jacksonville, Texas Choir is on the porch. I love it, man. I love it. Good to see all you cats. What do we got? Wait. Nope. Next one. Grozny. Yeah, right. Percy said it better. Man is the measure of all things. All things are what they are, and they're not what they are not. Absolutely. Let's see, man. Going over a couple of production tabs right here. Currently, I'm on the second level of the Bart Bunker, the command center level of the Bart Bunker. So we got a little bit better connection than we had when we were out on the road, and I'm just doing the stuff off the laptop. Appreciate you guys' patience, man. We're going to go ahead and roll with this thing. Get things on to Brother Turtle. Hey, right on, man. Made it this weekend. Sorry I missed this weekend. Watched it afterwards. I'm glad you caught the replay, brother. Glad you caught the replay, and I did get the message. Listen, guys, if you can't make it out, I always appreciate the support, man. I appreciate you guys showing up. But listen, man, I don't run things like a public school, you know, and demand a permission slip or a doctor's note. I understand that this is a difference between people that are looking at independent media and people who can just, you know, like use a streaming service and download their network television or whatever. You know, you guys take the time out of your week to be here. You guys take the time out of your day to check out the replay if you can't make the shot. You know, it's not like I'm just running this. So it's very special when you guys show up. And I understand that because of the nature of everyone who's here, y'all have real lives, man. Y'all got real lives. There's going to be times you can't make it, and I totally get that. So while I appreciate the thought and I appreciate the message and everything, don't ever feel bad about not being able to make it, you know, because I understand, man. We've all got real lives, you know. And this until this turns into a big professional production, it is what it is. So if you guys can make it out, oh man, I'm just glad when you show, brother. So Turtle, thank you for that, man. I hope every one of you guys had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Gonna go ahead and fade the bumper music, fade the bumper music out. Once again, that bumper music, as always, Older No Wiser is the name of the track. Name of the band is Red Desert. They are from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Little gut stomping rock and roll band, and it makes me really, really happy that they have been cool enough to let me use that as bumper music, pretty much for the duration of the program. I want to get a couple of what is that? Painting a wizard, you said? Um, yes. Okay. So here's the thing. Let me get a couple of sponsor shout outs out of the way. First of all, of course, Brother Roman, who's one of my oldest and dearest friends, we go all the way back to 1988. And you know what? We didn't get a chance to share that. I should have. I totally forgot to share that story when we had you on because we had the network communication problems. But our origin story, I meant to share that when I had you on, but we will get to it another day. Roman and his lovely wife Carrie and Roxy and Allie, the bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. He does phenomenal watercolor work, the erotic pinups and portraits of people, and he's got a book out. We interviewed him on it. He was our first remote guest a few weeks ago when I was down in Texas. From Dork to Pimp Daddy. It's a guide for how to get, how just like an ordinary individual like yourself or like Roman can go from just, ordinary nebbish one day, and next thing you know, he's got hot women asking him and willing to pay him money to paint pictures of them naked, right? So go check it out at opiumtales.com. From Dork to Pimp Daddy. Check out the book. It is available on Amazon. You definitely going to want to check that out. And also the testosterone-driven commentary over on opiumtales.com. Definitely not to be missed. I appreciate you, Roman. Thank you for everything you do. Also, now that we are post-Thanksgiving, I have to give a shout-out to my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison. Dusty, the pitmaster over there at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. They smoked the holiday bird again this year. We have kept the tradition alive now for 10 years. Actually, nine. This would be the 9th year, so next year is going to be the 10th, and it's, oh my God, that bird was so freaking amazing. And I kicked down a little extra to make sure that I got some ribs to go with it, because these ribs, and Sonny, if you're on board, and Deacon Mark, I know I know you have heard Sonny rattle on about those ribs. They are amazing. They are Sonny tested, Spetsnaz approved, but did a fantastic job smoking the holiday bird. They will be smoking holiday birds for Christmas as well. So all of my guys that are in the Spokane area, definitely hit them up. They are on all the social media platforms. Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Period. End of statement. Done. Yeah, but what about sit down, shut up, you're wrong. That's it. Sit down. Do at. Right. So, another little slug of liquid enthusiasm. Didn't bring the battle bottle this week because I felt like the battle bottle would have been overkill. Just so you know, with regards to the energy level, because several of you guys have asked, and I'm just gonna dip into it just very, very quickly because it does definitely need to be addressed. He tried to comment, the drool got in the way. Okay. You should have seen him out in Montana. I swear, when he thought, and thankfully Charlie and I had a couple of tubs of ribs like set aside, but when he thought that the kids had finished the last of those ribs, man, it was, I've known the man for 12 years now, and that was one of the few times that I was like legit scared. I mean, like he always has a menacing kind of presence, but in that moment, I was like, dude, he could go, and Charlie and I trying to save the day, like, Sonny, we got ribs, we got ribs. It was a really funny moment, man. I wish you guys could have been there. In any case, I did want to address this really quick because I've mentioned it in my ordinary, my regular feed, my regular posts on Facebook. You guys know I am 54 years old. And with regard to physical limitations and capacities both of skeletal muscle tissue and the skeleton itself and the connective tissues and the joints and everything. I already have my first replacement part, and it's holding up really, really well. But I found myself in this position of finishing up a gig, having the bank account stacked up on to a certain level to where I would not have to do anything until the new year. And I found myself with 6 or 7 weeks with nothing to do but eat, lift, and rest. And I thought, because I've been kicking this idea around for a while of doing one last hurrah mass building cycle. You guys, a lot of you knew, back in the day when I was powerlifting and I was on like ridiculous amounts of unconventional supplements, shall we say. I mean, I was freak of nature huge. I was walking around 275, 280, just massive. I don't plan on getting that big, but I thought, you know what? This is probably the last chance that I'm going to have where it's the perfect storm. Everything kind of came together. I've got plenty of meat in the freezer. I've got a fully equipped gym 20 feet from my front door because the garage is amazing. I have a backlog of the aforementioned unconventional supplements, and I have nothing but time. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do one last hurrah here. I'm 54. I might not get this chance again. So I just said, hell with it, man. Let's see if I can do the baby Dorian thing and see how big I can get. And right now, I've been back 2 weeks. Already put on probably 10 to 15 pounds, most of which is lean mass. I am still doing 100% carnivore. This is the thing, man. The stack that I'm doing right now, for those of you guys who are familiar with unconventional supplementation, this will mean more to you than the layman. I am currently stacking Sustanon, Deca, proper Deca, not NPP. So theoretically, I should be getting a whole lot of the water retention. I have Anadrol in the stack as well. I should be blown up like a freaking walrus right now. Like I should totally have the chipmunk cheeks and southern trends, and I should totally be walking around looking like Kung Fu Panda right now. And while I am not as lean as I would like to be, and I'm not as lean as I had been before I started on this massive stack, I am pretty impressed with the amount of leanness that I've been able to preserve and the amount of bloat and water retention that I've been able to avoid, considering the supplements that I'm on and the amounts in which I am using them. So it seems to be working out pretty well right now. If you guys want to message me, we can get into actual stacks. We can get into some of the peptides that I'm playing around with to go with these other supplements. We can get into all of that. But right now, I'm a man on a mission. And Thanksgiving was right. Don't forget to do planks as workout finishes. Absolutely, man. Because I know, Clem. I know if I show up down at Fort Honey Badger, and I could be looking like I could be looking like Dorian Yates on contest day. But if I can't hold a plank for 2 minutes, there is going to be an angry Russian with a foot on the small of my back right before it gets buried in my ass. So we're definitely, particularly on upper body days, we are doing planks as finishers, Clip. Rest assured. And while I'm in there, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm just breathe. Clem, it's good to have you on board. G-Dub, hey man, I'm glad you made it. Check this out. Yeah, I'm on a plateau at the 269 mark. Gonna have to fast hard again to get past it. Hey, I get it, bro. I get it. G-Dub, just real quick in the comments, have you tried carnivore? Have you tried like dipping into the carnivore pond? Roman was just saying he and the wife are about 80% carnivore right now, which is cool. I would say I'm probably about 90% carnivore right now. The exception that I make, again, on heavy lift days, particularly leg days, I'm hitting a bowl of oatmeal before I lift. Just a regular, like 2 cups of oatmeal right before I lift. And that's the extent of the carbs. I mean, beyond whatever whatever splash of eggnog I decide to put in my coffee, because eggnog is an evil bitch of a mistress, man. Oh, I can't get rid of it. Look, dude, I'm going to say it. You guys have heard me say it before. I'm going to stand by it. If they could make cum taste like eggnog, I would switch teams. I said what I freaking said, and I will not back off of that. It would just be absurd. Process that however you want to process it. I said it. I stand by it, man. Me and eggnog, dude. It's just like some beat up a stranger kind of stuff for me, man. I really, really love this stuff. I wrote a show that eggnog once. Eggnog. Okay, so before we jump into the rest of this stuff, anyway, so that's what's going on Planet Bar with regard to it. So if you see me like gradually putting on size, and right now, like up to the thing where you can actually see the shoulder and trap development through several layers of clothes. I'm gonna post pictures, when I get closer to the end, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. But that's basically what's going on. Cheetah, mostly keto. I'm driving 20-hour shifts up here in Alaska, kind of restricting what I can consume, but I'm working on it currently in a love-hate with all this jerky, right? Hey, G-Dub, if you've got, if you're there in the cab, here's the thing that will really, really help your ass out. If you get tired of jerky, just dip into a Walmart. Two things to pick up: the cans of chicken breast, okay, the little 4-packs of the cans of chicken breast. And I don't know, like, I'm sure it's more expensive up in Alaska because they have to ship everything in. But if they have a Walmart available, get the cans and the Great Value brand tuna packets. You don't worry about the Star. Yeah, water consumption is good. The Great Value brand tuna packets, forget about StarKist, forget about all the, like the Bumblebee and all the high-end brands, forget about all that stuff. The sweet and spicy Great Value brand tuna packets are better than any of the other tuna packets on the market, period, end of statement. I'll beat up a stranger to prove that point. It's good stuff. It's really, really good stuff. And when I'm out on a crane gig, or when I'm out on a long road trip or whatever, I've got one of the reusable grocery bags, and it's just, it's just stacked with those tuna packets. And that'll be good quality protein without having the, how should I say this, without having the gastrointestinal maladies that sort of intake of jerky can cause. And that's very, very unpleasant. But yeah, man, good luck with that, bro. Good luck with that. And anybody who is out there trying to lean out, anybody, I understand it's the holidays, guys. Discipline goes out the window and nobody's judging. But try to keep it together, man. Because remember, we got a fight coming up. We got a fight coming up. I am balls deep in moose meat when you want to trade later. That does sound appetizing because, like, I get it, but when I hear balls deep in moose meat, I can't help but imagine hitting a fat chick from the back. I know I'm going to hell for that, but it was just, I'm balls deep in moose meat is going to become part of the Reverend Bart Purvo lexicon now. Balls deep in moose meat. But yeah, dude, yeah, wild moose. Around here it's elk. What do we want to eat, man? And I didn't mean to get off that deep in it, but here we are. And of course, Brother Thomas on board. Good to have you, man. Glad you made it out. So we're about a half hour into the program. Let's go ahead and jump off into We're switching. That's right, boys and girls. It is time for Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Here we go. And the crowd goes wild. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hope you guys can hear that. Yes. Actually, I don't even know, man, because like I have played stuff through this before where you can't hear, but at least on my side of the microphone, there's a thunderous roar of applause. Maybe you guys can hear it, hopefully. If not, try to imagine it. But I did take the time to actually get that sound effect back on the soundboard. So yes, we're going to go into Ryan's Rabbit Hole, boys and girls. That is... it's our leadoff segment, and we've been doing it since early on. One of the things that Ryan and I bonded over early on is the fact that we are both repositories of useless information. That is correct. And we are just total, we're murder to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with, and we're a hell of a lot of fun to watch in a coffee fueled conversation. But we tend to gravitate towards things that are a little outside the beaten path with regard to our historical knowledge and things like that. What Ryan's rabbit hole is every week we do something that'll just kind of take us off the beaten path. Some days, some Sundays it dovetails with what we're getting into. Some days it doesn't. But at the very least, it's going to take you outside of things to which you have been previously exposed. Hopefully, take you out of your comfort zone a little bit, get you on board with some things that maybe you have heard before in terms of cultural references, but never really did a deep dive on to familiarize yourself with. And if we can get the minds to grow, then we feel like it's mission accomplished. Some weeks we go historical, some weeks we go philosophical, some weeks we go esoteric, and that's when Ryan normally really makes me work for it, is when we are going esoteric. I know, right? I'm so sorry. He's balls deep because it tasted like eggnog. Yes, of course. Oh my God! And there we went. Yo, Pandora, you want your box back? It's open. It's open. I knew better. I knew better than that. In any case, this week your search term is going to be Black Swan theory. Black Swan theory. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, you've heard this as a cultural reference before, and I'm sure that you have. There have been a number of very high-profile Hollywood films made about it, made with that as the anchor. Specifically, one called Black Swan. How much that actually really has to do with Black Swan theory or Black Swan events, I will leave to you once you have done your research on it. It's basically a metaphor to describe events that seemingly come out of nowhere. And normally they're major upheavals. When Black Swan events occur, they tend to be major upheavals on a cultural level. Okay, we're not talking like we all have surprises that come out of nowhere and are upheavals on our individual lives. But with regard to Black Swan events, these are things that seemingly come out of nowhere. And then once it has happened and the cultural upheaval has hit and gotten pushed out or adapted to, people want to go back in hindsight and re-examine it, assigning meanings to it that may or may not be accurate and may or may not be rationalizations for their own cognitive biases in not seeing the things that were patently obvious to anyone who was paying attention. Okay. 9/11 is commonly referred to as a Black Swan event, and it fits the definition. Looking at it in retrospect, however, it was not only predictable, it was inevitable. COVID and the sinister machinations and seizing and usurpation of power that came around as a result of the epidemic. People want to say that it was a Black Swan event. Well, generally, the people that refer to COVID as a Black Swan event are the ones that orchestrated the damn thing to begin with. So it is intellectually dishonest to even postulate such a thing. Not only did they anticipate that it was going to happen, but they were instrumental in making it happen. But again, the definition, and it has its roots 1700s. Ryan, help me out here. Black swans were thought not to exist. And then in 1700, they discovered one. I guess calling it the Black Swan theory was probably easier than calling it a coelacanth theory. For those of you who are familiar with cryptids, somebody's going to pull coelacanth out of their ass. And if you pull a coelacanth out of your ass, that's impressive because it's a very large fish. Boy, on one today, boy. Anyway, nobody thought the coelacanth existed either. They thought it had been extinct for literally millions of years until somebody caught one off of Madagascar in the 1960s. In any case, the black swan just because, okay, this is the thing. Why when these events happen, they take so many people by surprise is largely because of two things: normalcy bias and confirmation bias. And unfortunately, normalcy and confirmation biases have become such an integral part of our collective psyche, of our cultural zeitgeist, in fact, that, again, for anyone who is paying attention, these things should be patently obvious. The gaslighting that we talked about in the opener is one of the things that creates such a problem with what predicates black swan events, because we can see it coming. Not only can we see it coming, we do see it coming. We point out the fact that it's coming. We scream at other people and physically shake them to go, look what is coming. And then it happens. And because of that herd mentality and the confirmation and normalcy biases of the herd, it happens. And they go, wow, who could have seen that coming? Black swan. I want you to go down this rabbit hole primarily for purposes not just of what we're going to be discussing today and in future sermons, but I want you to understand it not from the standpoint of a cultural phenomenon, but from the standpoint of a psychological phenomenon, okay? Because what it is going to lay out is exactly what we are up against. It is why some of the more cynical among us have recommended just stop engaging. Just stop engaging. But for those who insist on continuing to engage, for those who continue to exercise that reluctant optimism about their fellow man, for those who still, for whatever blind reason, say, I have to get this message out, I have to tell people what is happening, I want you to at least understand what you are up against in no uncertain terms. So start with that. Black swan, you can go black swan theory, black swan event, black swan, we could go Rule 33 and do black swan porn. I don't recommend it. Sorry, I'm still on eggnog and moose meat. So anyway, focus, Bart, focus. Black swan. That is going to be your rabbit hole for the week. Black swan event, black swan theory. I want you guys to do a deep dive on that. What do we get? 20 Iranians caught on the Texas border this week, but at least they weren't misgendered. Yeah, and we're going to get more into that once we hit some of the bullet points, particularly what we're going to be discussing with regard to the events that are going on in Dublin right now. It's been an active news week. I am trying and hoping against all hope. Let me go ahead and, nope. Let me run this back here. We'll go that. I want to make sure we've got, here we go. Cool. Run that at the bottom. Get that ticker going so you guys have the rest of my social media platforms available to you. Okay. I'm trying to avoid becoming hyper-focused on news and current events. I'm trying to go a little deeper here, and I'm trying to reach a little bigger here. You've heard me say it a lot on my personal Facebook page that between the Stoics and the scriptures, I am able to maintain my sanity. What do you mean by that, Bart? Let me tell you what I mean by that. the Stoics are very, very big on the principle that you don't have control. You only have control of what you have control of. You don't have control of the majority of things that affect your life. What you have control over is your response to it. I wasted so many years, overwhelmed, self-inflicted overwhelmed with day-to-day madness, with ordinary affairs of the world over which I had no control, no effect, no influence. My return to the faith corrected a lot of that. Learning humility corrected a lot of that. But in the same sense that Stoicism will lead you to Scripture, Scripture touches hard on the same principles as the Stoics. You have to be humble enough to admit there's a lot of stuff that you don't have control over. Having said that, I would be remiss if I let down the responsibility that I have to keep you guys at least informed tangentially. I'm not going to do deep dives on it anymore, and it's been a slow and gradual thing. You guys notice, for those of you who were paying attention back in January, February this year, even before my return to the faith, you guys noticed that I had taken a different direction. That was part of the evolution that started then and is still ongoing. George, I'm glad you made it. Russia is one of the only countries to help the white South African people. That is correct. Because they do understand, and this is where Patton got it wrong. Patton said that the Russians are not a European people, that they are an Asiatic people. I radically and vehemently disagree. When it comes to, think about the very word Caucasian. From the steppes of the Caucasus Mountains, where is that? You think the Vikings didn't get upriver and do some raping and pillaging up around, the Kurgan cultures of that region? They're white, man. Sorry. Until you get out into the stands, right? Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and even there, a big part of it. They are white people. They are white blood. And they may be the last on the planet because Europe has largely fallen. And some would profess that is inevitable. I disagree. But even assuming, conceding for the sake of discussion, that it is true that Europe has fallen, Russia stands. Russia stands not only racially, but more importantly, culturally. The Orthodox Church, with the fall of communism, and George, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. Because I think when Patton was referring to Asiatic, he was right. No, I absolutely see what you're saying. What Patton was trying not to say was filthy Jews. Okay, let's just call it what it is. When he referred to them as an Asiatic people, he was referring to the leadership who were Bolsheviks. And initially, that revolution, even though it went radically anti-Semitic later, as totalitarian governments tend to do, that was fought for and initiated by Jews. Sorry, but there it is. And yeah, George is like, yep, got it. Again, that's a discussion for another time. But it's a discussion that needs to be had. In any case, racially and culturally, Russia may be the last bastion for white blood on the planet. Why is that so important to you, Bart? Why is that so important, and why are you off on this tangent? You know exactly why that's important to me. everybody knows my history from my years when I was young and bulletproof. Everybody knows how I have evolved from that. Everybody also knows that the prime directive that I follow is to walk in truth and continue to speak truth. Any race, any culture that is unconvinced of its own uniqueness and worth will perish. When you look at the gifts, and again, I will say this absolutely without equivocation, the West is God's highest expression. The West is God's highest cultural expression on this planet. I say that absolutely and without equivocation. If our civilization and the blood that created it, because it's improper to say that R word, if we perish off the planet, civilization collapses with us, and humanity will enter a dark age from which we will likely never emerge. That is it. The only thing that'll possibly save it at that point is going to be the Asians. Again, different discussion. And I got way sidetracked here. But this is the bottom line. I do have to keep you guys informed. I do have to discuss the news of the week, but we're not doing deep dives on it anymore because I am only going to go in as far as how this affects us culturally and spiritually. How this affects us spiritually, even if someone is secular, even if someone does not walk with Christ, even if someone walks an Asatru path, okay? Because Asatru culturally still tied to the indigenous peoples of Europe. People who are completely secular and yet cleave to European cultural views and European cultural standards. This affects us as a people. You're just talking about white people. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Roman look white to you? Big John, who's shown up before, he look white to you? Right. It is about culture. It is about culture. There are plenty of people who do not share our blood who have assimilated to European cultural standards and values. Christianity is alive and well in a lot of places in sub-Saharan Africa. Places that our government currently persecutes because it's apparently the only Africans they didn't want to give money to. Different discussion, different ballgame. I say all that to say, I say all that in an attempt at explanation of why I touch on the news items and kind of just gloss over them to try to get to a larger point. Having said that, this week, just a couple of news items. This is so freaking funny. Vovon and Lexus. Wait a minute, is that okay? Oh, I know about Lexus. Vovon, is that like some Russian make of automobile? No, Vovon and Lexus are two Russian pranksters. They love doing prank calls where they get people on and they string them along and they expose them for their stupidity. They expose them for their vulnerability, for their gullibility. They've hit people that I like, right? They've hit people that I like over things that I don't like about those people. What do you mean? One of the people they hit was Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy, right? They hit her. I love that woman. I absolutely love that woman, and I feel like she has cultural evidence that we have hit the tipping point and we are going more hardcore right wing, for lack of a better word. I think she is a classic example of that. However, they hit her on an area where I disagree with her vehemently, and that is continuing to support Ukraine. One of the things they exposed when they had her on, and she was thinking that she was talking to Zelensky. That's the long and the short of this. They've been pranking a lot of people calling up saying that they are Volodymyr Zelensky and hitting people up for money and getting them to discuss political efforts. When they got Meloni, they got her to admit that the nations of Europe are tired of supporting the Ukraine thing. That was a big admission. She was very supportive of Ukraine early on. I disagreed, still disagree. Her support is waning, as is the rest of Europe. They, during the Russian collusion BS that was going on, they got Adam Schiff, who was on the Intelligence Committee, someone who was ostensibly in charge of our national security, let alone the same, that had Dianne Feinstein, who had a Chinese spy working in her office, that had Eric Swalwell, who was banging a Chinese spy for years, the honey trap that had access to information, classified information. Adam Schiff, same thing. Adam Schiff tied indirectly to pedos. That's not hyperbole. Look it up. He absolutely defended a child sex offender and had this guy living in his house. Okay. That's who Adam Schiff is. That bug-eyed look. He's holding back the demon. That's what's going on here. I'm Adam Schiff and I'm holding back the demon. That's where the bug eyes are coming from. Okay. Let's just call it what it is. In any case, they got Schiff. Tricked him into thinking that they weren't opposing Zelensky, but they tricked him into thinking that they were Russian operatives with compromise, right? Compromising information. We have nude pictures of Trump. We have pictures of Russian hookers peeing on Trump in a hotel bed, blah, 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 blah. And Schiff ate it up, little bug-eyed maggot. Ate up every last bit of it. They got him. This week, Vofan and Lexus got Jerome Powell. Who the hell is Jerome Powell? Well, some of you, if you're here and you're with me, probably got a better. He is the chairman. He is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. This guy, oh my God. So far they've gotten Angela Merkel, they've gotten Giorgia Meloni, and they got the chief of the Federal Reserve Board. Do you understand what's going on here? That's the purse strings. That's the money. Everyone knows that Biden is compromised to Ukraine. Everybody knows about the Burisma deal. But this is dangerous, man. This is dangerous. First of all, when somebody calls out of the blue and is able to speak to the Fed Reserve Chair out of nowhere, no credentials, no proof, the first question I had was, how the hell did they get the number? A little creepy. And of course, they refer to them as, pro-Kremlin comedians. Pro-Kremlin comedians. Jesus, man, come on. But yeah, that happened. They were able to access the Federal Reserve Chair. Oh my goodness. And let me see. What is the excuse that they had? It was a friendly conversation that took place in a context of our standing in support of Ukrainian people in this challenging time. No sensitive or confidential information was discussed. Well, that much is true. However, the servility was the troubling part of it. They could not say that it was doctored. Go find the video. Watch it. Every time I try to play the sound through here, it doesn't come through, so I'm going to leave it to you. Go find the video. Watch it. Servile would be the adjective that I'd choose to describe. Yes, Mr. Zelensky. Can we get you some more money, Mr. Zelensky? Any sanctions you need us to take care of? Stand with Ukraine. Embarrassing. But that's where we are. It's really, really sad that these guys couldn't do us all a favor and pretend to be Chinese financiers. I'd love to find that. I'd love for them to get Biden on the phone. Rule 34. Yes, I'm sorry, Rule 34, 33. I'm sorry. I really like the new Argentine president. George, I'm on board with that. That guy here's the thing. There are some red flags about the guy. That's a discussion for another time. The one thing that the left is very, very fond of saying every time one of their people gets into power and it's obvious that there's some red flags about, but they don't want to, they would say, well, he's upsetting all the right people. And then what they said about Obama, remember that, right? This is one of those situations where we get to turn it around on them. I am not 100% convinced about this guy in Argentina. There are some things that definitely give me pause. In the same way that Vivek Ramaswamy gives me pause. There are a lot of red flags about that guy too. But as the left is fond of throwing out, he's upsetting all the right people. So he's important. Go take a look at that interview that he did with Tucker Carlson. That was interesting. Tucker Carlson, the last remaining relevant journalist. And boy, and you can ask Roman. You can ask Roman. Back in the days of the Bush junta during the first Gulf War, if you would have told Roman one day he will be singing, one day your boy Bart is going to be the Rev's going to be singing the praises of Tucker Carlson, I'm thinking that wouldn't have rolled. Andy, well, how nice of you to show up. He's important to himself. Are we talking about Argentine president, or are we talking about Tucker? And do we really want to have that long conversation? In any case, I'm really fond of who Tucker has become. Going from a spineless neocon shill for the Bush junta to actually letting his balls drop. And actually, it suits his narrative. Okay, that's possible. But actually confessing where he'd been wrong. That sort of candor is rare. So rare as to be referred to as a black swan with regard to the current state of so-called journalism. The one thing that I will say for Tucker, and you're right on that front, you're right on that front that it is about his narrative. Here is my retort to that. He's never tried to say that it's anything but opinion. The one bit of credit I will give to Tucker is he's not doing the Pravda thing where he is masquerading as legitimate journalism and instead being propaganda for the regime. That's where I draw the distinction. But conversation for another time. In any case, yeah, they got hold of the Fed chair and they tricked him into talking. And it was an exposition of the servility. Getting back to the original topic at hand, it was an exposition of the servility with which we hold Ukraine in regard. And that by itself should be disturbing. But again, it's the gaslighting. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Remember what we talked about in the opener, right? You guys remember, what is the quote from Huxley? I'll pull it right back up. What is the quote from Huxley? Course of every intellectual, if he pursues his journey long and influentially enough, ends in the obvious from which the non-intellectuals have never stirred. Us dumbasses, us ignorant hillbillies, us working class deplorable folk, we have a very clear-eyed view of what's going on because we're out here on the ground. We're trying to earn a living. We are incredibly difficult to gaslight because we don't think like herd animals. And one of the primary differences between us and the herd is that we tend to be unafraid. We are unafraid to speak uncomfortable truths. We are unafraid to stand in the face of regime propaganda and say, this is regime propaganda. We know what is happening with regard to a weaponized Department of Justice. They can do the intellectual gymnastics all they want to act as if this is not straight up third world regime weaponizing its justice system against its political enemies, but we can see with our own eyes what's going on. You don't have to like Trump. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like Tucker. You don't have to like any of these people. But to act as if you don't have to like Elon. I mean, I do. But to deny the importance of the position that he's in is straight up dishonest. We know that the left control, again, and this is just because we're dumb, because we're too dumb to do the intellectual gymnastics required to believe that sort of stuff. I want to pull up the Orwell quote about some things are just so dumb that only the highly educated could believe it. Because we're simple, we just look at something and call it what it is. And call it what it is. Who denies it? The culture right now. I'm sorry. That's, you know what, Andy, I misspoke on that. Not the culture, but the cultural narrative denies it. What are we told right now about Elon? He's an anti-Semite. Are you effing kidding me? Elon Musk is anti-Semitic. Okay, cool. For making a factual statement, any of this stuff that's going on doesn't matter. We're past the Zelensky prank calls at this point, and we're on to the next thing. The narrative is driven by our media, of course, and the media are what? The media are what? A propaganda ministry for the regime. The deep state, for lack of a better word. Again, we're rehashing a lot of stuff we've already been over right here. People like to deny the existence of a deep state, but we did a whole sermon once on Eisenhower and his military-industrial complex speech. And that the first draft was military-industrial congressional complex. His Republican cohorts begged him to remove that from the draft, and ultimately he did. So instead we got the military-industrial complex. What it really is, no, Andy, I don't want you to go silent. You're good. I didn't even tell you to go to bed. Relax. The military-industrial congressional complex. What better way to sum that up but to call it the deep state? It's not some sinister machination. It's not like some Council of 12 about, the Freemasons having to be in conjunction with the Gnomes of Zurich and the Elders of Zion. Money protects money, power protects power. No conspiracy required. And when you have money and power on that level, billions of dollars, and the power to control the purse strings of those billions of dollars, and a media machine at your disposal to create a narrative to control how the public perceives the flow of that, the flow of those billions of dollars and the exercise of that power. What would you call that but the deep state? Again, off on a tangent. Didn't mean to go that route, but here we are. Speaking of media creating the narrative, two things that I want to adjust on. Okay, since we're talking about media creating the narrative with the Israeli situation, right? You have half of them. This is fun. I saw a really funny meme the other day about, and it was that angry Hindu guy meme, but it was Kanye's face, and it was Kanye looking at all the people that canceled him for talking about Jews. There it is. The same people that spent the last 6 years calling everybody Nazis are now saying from the river to the sea. I'm sorry, to the river to the sea. And again, you guys know I am no friend of Israel. Okay, I am a friend of Christendom. I'm a friend of the people who follow Christ. I am not a fan of the secular nation of Israel and their holy book, which says that our Messiah, our Savior, is a false prophet boiling in a vat of excrement for all eternity. Okay? We've already been over that. Don't need to rehash it. But some days there are no white hats and black hats. Some days there aren't enough, pardon the language, some days there aren't enough fuck yous to go around. The media is currently playing that narrative from both sides. On the one hand, they want to call Elon Musk anti-Semitic in the very for making a factual statement about Israel. Not even making a factual statement, giving a like and a nod and saying, I agree, to someone else making a factual statement on Israel. So he's a raging anti-Semite and needs to be deplatformed, except he's the richest guy on the planet and owns the freaking platform. But again, the overall narrative has to be, he disagrees with, therefore he is, right, marginalize, isolate, marginalize, isolate, marginalize, isolate. This is the tactic. And unfortunately, because most people are hair triggered, have no critical thinking skills. No, it's not a constant state of shock. Not a constant state of shock. And keep in mind, even if it were shock, let's isolate the difference between shock and surprise. Nothing these people do surprises me anymore. But periodically, they do still manage to shock me, man. They really do. I am no longer surprised, for instance, on the critical thinking skills tab. I'm no longer surprised when people's lack of critical thinking skills. But sometimes the disconnect is just so freaking jaw-dropping that I find myself shocked. Even the dumbest of the dumb should have picked this up. But again, off on a tangent. The media creates the narrative. They push whatever they need for the sake of the regime, for the sake of the deep state. When you're talking about money protecting money and power protecting power, we know that the cadaver in chief right now, first of all, has no idea what planet he's on, which is why I keep referring back to the regime instead of, I don't blame Joe Biden for anything. If he was your grandfather, you'd take his freaking car keys. You really think they give him the nuclear codes? Come on. Let's not be stupid. They know that he is a liability now. They know going into the 2024 election season, it's becoming less and less likely that they will be able to put Trump in a position where he can't run. Even if they manage to pull off a conviction, any of these harebrained cases they're doing to the man, it's not going to prevent him from running. They're in a bad spot, and they know Biden can't win. Let's assume that everything that they say about Trump is true. Let's just concede, for the sake of argument, that he's a racist, that he's a buffoon, you know. And some of these things I will totally agree. That he's inarticulate, that he has no acumen, that he's, you know, blah blah blah. All of these things. Let's just assume that all of these things are true, right? How bad do you have to be where he still seems like the more preferable option? You remember 2016? What did I have to say about Hillary back in 2016? She was barely able to edge out an aging communist, and they got trounced by who we had been told for a year and a half prior was an absolute moron, spray tan, clown shoed, toupee wearing buffoon. She barely edged out. She had to rig an election to edge out an aging communist in Bernie Sanders, the millionaires and the billionaires. And then she couldn't beat a clown shoot spray tan orange buffoon. How bad do you think Biden has to be when he's performing that badly? And Andy, you're absolutely right. Really, really bad. What do you think is going to happen post San Francisco visit? Guys, were we taking that into account? Did we take a look at that? Anybody who has been to San Francisco will tell you that it is a festering third world shit sore. For years, we have lamented that. For years, the people of San Francisco have suffered under it. For years, it has become the running joke because it was Pelosi's district that was covered with human feces and dirty needles. And, I get to see the lightweight version of that up here in Seattle and Portland whenever I'm over on that side of the state. I can't imagine how bad it must be in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. Because I haven't been to San Francisco since, oh Lord, how long has it been? 99. Been 20 plus years since I've been to San Francisco. Can't even imagine how bad it is. But again, I get to see the lightweight version of it in Seattle and Portland, so I have some tangential idea. They cleaned it up overnight. Gone. All of them gone. Don't know where we put them. Don't know where they housed them. Don't know where they moved them to. Don't know where the holding tanks are. Don't know where the Soylent Green processing facility is. Just tent camps everywhere. Boom, gone. Overnight. Why? Because the Lord Emperor God King was coming. President Xi. We know that the cadaver in chief, his regime, again, not Biden, but the regime. We know the regime is compromised, the Chinese financiers. We know it. We know people on both sides of the political aisle are compromised. Every action they take reflects that. And we don't get caught up in the intellectual gymnastics because we're just a bunch of dumb hillbillies calling it like we see it. Hurt. You know when somebody's bought. You know Mitch McConnell's bought. They are banking on us losing. Why do you think he came to San Francisco? Why do you think he spoke to Gavin Newsom? Because this is what's going to happen going forward. Biden, at some point, and they're going to wait until they see who gets the Republican nod. The Republicans are going to shoot themselves in the foot if they put anybody but Trump to run. Why? Because they're right about one thing. The regime and the deep state are right about one thing. He does control the party now. He and the movement that he created do control the party now, for good or for ill. You can say that's Hitlerian. You can say that's messianic. Messianic, that's my college word. I got like 3 of those. But for good or for ill, he does control the party. If they don't nominate him, no matter who is running, they could run Biden again. They could run Biden again. And if the Republicans nominate anyone but Trump, no one will turn out. Biden, that is the only way that Biden can win the election. Again, in my estimation. And Andy, if we're taking bets, we're taking bets. I'll put a hundo right now. I'll put a hundo that says that Trump gets the GOP nod, and I'll go double or nothing. I'll go double or nothing that he wins. If they run Biden. But getting back to the original point of the rant, if indeed there was a point to the rant, when, in my opinion, Trump gets the nod, they will realize that Biden can't beat him. They will pull him out for whatever reason, whether they finally admit to his corruption, whether they finally admit to what everybody else can see about his cognitive decrepitude. Those are my other 2 college words. They're going to put Newsom in. Xi going to San Francisco and meeting with Newsom. That was the tell. Newsom's their guy. That's who they're ultimately going to run. That's who they're ultimately going to try to rig the election for. Again, pure speculation, just discussing. But again, the people that are able to take a look. Here's an example. The Al Shifa Hospital. You guys paying attention to that? I thought Nebish was your college. Also true. Um, the Al Shifa Hospital. Here's the difference between perception and reality. The reality of the situation is that Hamas and Hezbollah regularly use hospitals and schools as the equivalent of a human shield. They put missile installations behind schools, behind hospitals. They construct launch sites in civilian areas and launch missiles from those civilian areas because the optics, they're totally okay sacrificing civilians because hey, they're going to the next life. They died gloriously for Islam and it's wonderful and they have a great afterlife. Good on them. They do that. So when hospitals get struck and when schools get struck with white phosphorus and cluster munitions and any of the other horrible things that the Israelis use that we basically gave to them, I'm always hesitant. Oh my God, they bombed a hospital. The first reaction is, yeah, but Al Shifa is an exception. Because they're continuing to push the narrative, but now the narrative is falling apart because at the Al Shifa Hospital, they found no evidence of missile launch sites. But they put up, let me see if I think I downloaded a photo right here. Where was it? Oh, yes, they found a huge stash of weapons. A huge stash of weapons. You ready for this? There it is. There's a stash of weapons they found at Al Shifa Hospital. That's what they found. Well, I guess we had to blow up the whole hospital with cluster munitions and white phosphorus. I mean, look what we found. I'm going to tell you something. My wife works at a hospital in Austin, Texas, and at the end of an active weekend, I would say there's probably more guns than this there that are taken off of people coming into the ER. This is what justified a hospital being shredded. So again, the gaslighting works both ways. Who do you believe anymore? Do you believe people that you know are straight up lying to you and trying to masquerade as if they're being objective? Do you choose to believe people that are at least shooting straight and telling you, hey, this is how I feel about it? Are we indeed in a post-truth era? God forbid. But particularly with regard to the cultural narrative, and this is what really, really gets me, is what happened in Dublin. Because culture matters. People aren't going to like hearing this, but race matters. Race, culture, the civilizations that races and cultures create, it matters. Not for the media. Because the deep state, by its very nature and by definition, is what? Globalist. There will be no national boundaries. There will be no national borders. You will own nothing. You will be happy. Man, that's me and my tinfoil hat, man. I'll be over here with Alex Jones, putting stuff in the water to turn the freaking frogs gay. But again, that's gaslighting. We can see what's happening with our own two eyes, and we point it out, and they want to go through the intellectual gymnastics. What is going on in Ireland? The same thing that is going on in Sweden. The same thing that is going on in any number of European and Scandinavian countries. They are being flooded with immigrants from cultures and civilization. Yes, thank you, Andy. They are being flooded with immigrants, savages, let's call it what it is, that originate in civilizations that are fundamentally incompatible with the values of the West, that fundamentally hate the West, and that fundamentally hate the white European blood that created Western civilization. What do you think is going to happen when you open the doors for them? What do you think is going to happen? The Swedes, in the first 10 years of their upsurge in immigration from Middle Eastern and African nations, found that their rapes had increased tenfold, and that nearly without exception, it was the new immigrants who were committing those rapes. And the Swedes, boy, they were courageous. They were courageous. They got right on that. They said, something's got to be done. And you know what they did? They quit keeping statistics on the ethnicity of rapists. That's what they did. Boy, that'll show them. Again, we're just a bunch of racist, redneck deplorables. What the hell do we know? Well, what we know is what we can see with our own two eyes. And because Google's free, you do a little bit of digging, and we know. Let me ask you something. Again, with regard to the Gaza situation and the reason why the media is driving the narrative so hard on Gaza, none of the Arab countries in that region will take in refugees from Gaza. Why? Because they know that they're crawling with Hamas and Hezbollah. They know that they're savages, and they know that anywhere they wind up, shit's getting blown up. They won't take them. Where do you think they're going to wind up? And the Israelis, they couldn't be happy. They couldn't be happier. They get to grab more land, and we get to deal with the dregs and the refuse. Fighting their battle again, Goyim. Good job. Stand with Israel. Stand with Israel. Getting 57A. Look it up. Somalians believe that if a woman gets raped, it's because she didn't run fast enough. You know, yeah, here's the thing. You can tell a lot about a culture by the things that the culture invents. Do you want to know what South Africa has given us since they ran the white people out? The rape sleeve. Yeah. That's the biggest invention to come out of South Africa. It's an insertable device for women that's got barbed hooks on the inside of it because rape has become so endemic in Johannesburg now that they put this in and they walk around with it every day like a tampon. And if a guy tries to rape them, it goes in, the barbs dig into their cock, and when they show up at the hospital to have it surgically removed, then they get arrested. Bravo, man. What a great thing. Good thing they got rid of those evil apartheid white people. You know what else they get? Oh, the undermount flamethrowers for vehicles, because on top of being the rape capital of the world now, Johannesburg is also the carjacking capital of the world. So they've developed, and which again, you know, it's a shit statement. It's a shit statement on the culture, but I really, really, really want to have one of these for every one of my vehicles. Flamethrowers underneath. Flamethrowers underneath vehicles as an anti-carjacking tool. Yeah. That's South Africa. Cradle of civilization, baby. Anyway, what happened in Sweden? Same thing that's happening everywhere. Everywhere they're showing up. All of these so-called refugees. What are refugees? Let's examine that. Refugees. Who runs away from war? Who runs away from war? Who are the first people we try to get out of the war zones? Women and children, right? Women and children, get them out. They are the ones that run from war. Who are the people who are supposed to be standing and fighting? Or in fact, if you were somewhere else, going to where you're from and standing and fighting, who's supposed to do one or the other? We get the women and children out. Who is showing up in Europe? Who is showing up at our southern border? Are these women and children? Shut up. Are these families? Shut up. Fighting age males. Fighting age males. Overwhelmingly, almost to the point of exclusivity. It's fighting age males that are showing up. What do you call that but an invasion? They are showing up without their families. So only one of two possibilities exists. Either A, they are legitimately fleeing these horrible war zones and leaving their families behind, or this is an orchestrated effort. You choose. Either way, it's a pretty piss poor statement on the people that are showing up. Wouldn't you agree? Europe is already paying the price for it. Look at what is happening in Sweden. Look at what is happening in Scandinavia across the board. Look at what is happening in the UK. All the riots that came out. What happened immediately after the Gaza situation kicks off? And again, leaving aside how you may feel about Israel, how you may feel about non-existent Palestine, no matter what you feel about it, look at the culture itself. What happened in England? England. Whites are a minority in London. Ponder that. White people are a minority in London. And what happened? They took to the streets by the tens of thousands to support what? The host culture that had welcomed them in, the culture of the West, the accommodations that the West had given to them. No, they came out because why? Ultimately, they, wait for it, open your brains up really, really big now for this concept. They stand first with their blood and their culture. Europeans aren't allowed. Right? Right? I do remember that, Ryan. Orange fella. Right? Orange fella. Bad comb over. When the balloon goes up, these people will stand with their blood and their culture. And that is something that white Europeans and the civilizations they have created not only no longer do, but are actively discouraged from doing, and wherever possible, not allowed to. Dublin. Dublin. Yeah. Elon weighed in on Dublin. This is what St. Elon had to say about what happened in Dublin. Irish children were stabbed by a foreign man in Dublin yesterday, yet the government twists the story and used the backlash as an opportunity to pass new hate speech laws. The Irish government wants all of your freedoms. Is he wrong? Is he wrong? He was a foreigner, a Muslim foreigner. He stabbed women and kids. A fighting age man, no family, stabbed women and kids. And just like with everything else, it's always used as an example because the riots that kicked off were used as an excuse to further suppress speech. Why? Because us ignorant hillbilly deplorables can see the writing on the wall and we're speaking out about it. And we can't have that. We're supposed to be good little Goyim. Good little globalist Goyim. Do what you're told. Let yourself be ethnically cleansed. Whoa, did he just say ethnic cleansing? Yeah, I did. I said it without either a shred of hyperbole or a shade of equivocation, because that is exactly what's going on. Ethnic replacement theory is a conspiracy theory, except for all of the articles that I could pull up with a 9-second Google search that say, yes, we will replace them, including the New York Times. Tinfoil hat, man. Me and Alex Jones. Gay frogs. I will never apologize for speaking the truth. I will never apologize if it hair lips every hillbilly on Buck Creek and short dicks every cannibal on the Congo. I will never apologize for speaking the truth. Never. And this is the problem. We continue to trust these people with our protection. We continue to trust them because they are the leaders. This is what the police had to say in Ireland. What is clear is that these people have been radicalized through social media. Garda Commissioner Drew Harris said during the press briefing on Friday. He went on to describe the rioters as a complete lunatic hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology. Okay, that's one theory. You want to hear another one? Maybe they are just good, decent, native-born Irish that have seen with their own eyes for so long the inevitable results of what is happening and have said, we have had enough. It's the buzzwords. It's the buzzwords. that are designed to tune out that critical thinking. And I urge you. Am I preaching to the choir here? Yeah. But every one of these that I put out goes out to 6 different platforms. And maybe somebody will drift through and happen to see it. And maybe one guy will happen. Maybe I can plant a seed. At the very least, it's cheaper than therapy, because otherwise I just scream about it and I rage about it. I'm trying to get away from that. What is this all leading me to, guys? What is this all leading me to? We are under attack. As I said last week, words mean things. Words mean things. Are we persecuted? No, we're not persecuted. Not yet. Are they headed that direction? Yes. If you gave them the trigger tomorrow, would they pull it and have every one of us gulagged and shock treatment, re-educated, and dead if all else failed? Yes. Yes, they would. Absolutely. Don't have any illusions about that. But I refuse to call us persecuted right now. Why? Because look at what I'm doing. I'm speaking truth. And right now, no one's kicking in the door from one of the alphabet crews to take me away to the gulag. So we're not persecuted yet. As long as we continue to speak, we won't get there. Ryan, who is not a man of faith, but is my dear friend and my brother, he pointed out a little thing from Leviticus 5. Why? Because he knows the Bible better than a lot of you guys that are walking around calling yourselves Christian. I don't ever want to see one of y'all getting upset at Brother Ryan. Some of y'all get unnerved. I know you do. You haven't expressed that to me personally, because you know the bond that I have with the man, and you know how I'm going to react. But I feel y'all bristle when he and I get into exchanges about this. I feel y'all bristle. There are 2 primary reasons why I react and why we have the interaction we do. 1, because I love the man like my own flesh and blood. But 2, because, actually 3 reasons. Reason number 2, because he is coming from a place of honesty. He's not trying to tear me down. He's trying to check me. He's trying to check me, make sure I got the right perspective. He would never in a million years step up to me and go, man, you need to back off this Jesus shit. Never. He's the guy that will poke and say, hey, you sure about this? Making sure those skills are sharp. He is keeping me honest. And number 3, because even though he is a secular guy, he knows the Bible better than 90% of y'all that call yourselves Christians. He pointed out a little thing from Leviticus 5 last week. If anyone sins because they do not speak up when they hear a public charge to testify regarding something that they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. If anyone becomes aware that they are guilty, if they unwittingly touch anything ceremonially unclean, the carcass of an unclean animal, etc., because we are in Leviticus, right? And they are unaware that they have become unclean, but then come to realize their guilt. They learn of it and realize their guilt, then they are truly guilty. Here's the vibe of where that is going. Some people don't know. Some people don't know. Thank you. Deacon Mark, chiming in anecdotally. Majority of trans are white based upon observation alone. White males are bad. Cleansing can happen. You're right. Exactly. And it is ethnic cleansing. Yes, without gunfire. They have emasculated our culture. They have emasculated. Do you think any of these things that are destroying us from the inside out would even be remotely tolerated in any of the cultures that look to destroy us? Do you think the communist Chinese tolerate transgender affirming care, any of that. Do you think they have time for it? No, because culturally they want to win. It's certainly not tolerated in the Middle East. Sorry, queers for Palestine. None of the things that they erode our culture in. And it's our own fault. Why? Because we are the culture that gave us tolerance and the sovereignty of the individual. What we have stepped away from is the moral core. When I talk about, with a bullet point, I said about putting on the armor of God even for the secular. The armor of God even for the secular. Let me pull this one up right here. Ephesians. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And then Ephesians goes on to say, put on the whole armor of God that you may be protected against these evils and these principalities. Do you think that only applies to people that walk with Christ? Getting back to the cultural element of it, do you think that only applies to people that walk in the light? Morality does not need a religion, nor can a religion not exist without morality, clearly. What do we say about communism when the state becomes a religion? Where's the moral compass there? John Adams, I'm going to say probably my favorite founder, John Adams. Why? Well, for a lot of reasons. Number one, he was a principled man. Number two, he stuck to those principles even when it cost him on a personal level. You know that John Adams volunteered to represent the Brits that shot down Bostonians in the Boston Massacre? You know that he stepped up and volunteered to represent them, even though he was a colonial separatist, even though he was tired of the British and ready to throw them off, and even though he became one of the founders that led the revolution. When the Boston Massacre happened, he stepped up and volunteered to defend the British soldiers that had killed his countrymen. Why? On principle. Because he knew that the rule of law, even when it directly benefited people who he found personally contemptible, was still preferable to the rule of the mob. That's one of a dozen good reasons I love John Adams, why he's my favorite founder. But I'll go past this. And his last words on this earth, you know, he had a little side note, little mini rabbit hole. He and Jefferson died on the same day. Do you know what John Adams' last words were on this earth? Jefferson survives. Jefferson survives. Thomas Jefferson had died several hours earlier and several hundred miles away. Adams didn't know. Anyway, a dozen good reasons why John Adams is my favorite founder. But one of the quotes that is attributed to him, and we don't know that it was his quote any more than we know that scriptural attributions to Jesus were actually his words and not the words of the apostles. The point is this: they were attributed to him, therefore they are, for all intents and purposes, his words, and said that the Constitution of the United States was only suitable to a moral and religious people and was wholly unsuitable for any other. Now, a lot of hardcore evangelicals will say that that is proof that we are a Christian nation. I vehemently disagree. But when he said that the Constitution as a founding document was only suitable to a moral people, let me refer you back to what I just said. Morality doesn't have anything to do with religion, and religion doesn't have anything to do with morality. We can ascertain clearly what is evil, what is immoral by any reasonable definition. It is in us, right down to our conscience, right down to our, dare I say, soul. We know. And being that we have reached a point where we can no longer consider ourselves a moral people, we have to seriously reflect on our founding document, don't we? One of two things has to happen. We either need to reestablish ourselves as a moral people. And note, I am very careful in my use of words. I didn't say religious people. The last thing I want to see in this country or anywhere in the West is a outright theocracy. That is not constructive. That is not where I'm headed. But by God, pardon the expression, we had better find our spine and let our balls drop with regard to reestablishing ourselves as a moral people, or else the very foundings upon which we are based will not hold. And I don't mean just America. I'm looking at Europe. I am looking at the founding of Western civilization. I am looking at the culture and the civilization that my blood and my people created, and how it is eroding from the inside while being invaded from the outside. And what is America but an extension of Europe? A people unconvinced of their uniqueness and their worth, a culture unconvinced of its uniqueness and its worth, will necessarily perish. Done. So we find ourselves at an awkward historical tipping point. And Dublin is just the latest manifestation of that. Saddle up, boys and girls, because it's going to get worse. We have not yet begun. And this is the thing. And this is the thing. That stabbing in Dublin, that's not a one-off. Violent crimes, stabbing. Look in the UK. Google Muslim stabbings in UK, or just stabbings in UK, and then get into the ethnicity. High-profile cases where Muslim immigrants, refugees in the UK, are just beheading people, including British cops. Look it up. No-go zones. People are afraid to go. It is happening right in front of our faces. We are being gaslit, and we are being told to ignore it. And we are ignoring it. We are ignoring it. But on a moral level, going forward, looking at the possible erosion and death of our culture, our race, for lack of a better word, our blood, and the civilization that it created, putting on the armor of God to fight, these principalities, these authorities, the cosmic powers of this present darkness, the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. That doesn't have to be anything biblical. That merely comes down to realizing that evil exists. That evil exists, that it has manifested itself in every major cultural institution, and it is taking hold. And to coin a well overused cliche, all it takes for evil to prosper is that good men do nothing. And if evil does prosper, let me refer you back to Shakespeare. Treason doth never prosper. Why? For if it prosper, none dare call it treason. I'm going to paraphrase old Bill the Bard. Evil doth never prosper. Why? For if it prosper, none dare call it evil. If you think we're not already there culturally, either you literally haven't been paying attention, or the gaslighting has definitely done its evil work. And I will pray for you. I will pray for your clarity. I will pray for God to open your eyes, even if you don't acknowledge his existence. Because once you acknowledge, if anyone sins because they do not speak up when they hear a public charge to testify regarding something that they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. Do you understand? It's what Ryan brought up last week, Leviticus 5. Once you know, if you do nothing, you are culpable. Plenty of people walking around in this world ignorant right now. Plenty of people swayed and gaslit and misinterpreting and misinformed. Plenty of people walking around like that right now. And I do not hate them. I am exceedingly frustrated with the continued stupidity, and I hope against all hope. I pray for them that they will come to their senses. But I understand when every single thing that is spewed from the glowing box every single day, when everything you hear on the radio, everything you read in a magazine, everything that comes across your social media feed is evil, 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 evil. Don't worry about it, man. You are the Lord of your own life. No, man. Cutting the cocks off a healthy 13-year-old boy is it's gender affirming care. Gender affirming. I understand why people are so fucking spun. But Leviticus 5, once you have been shown the light, if you don't stand, you are culpable. And there will be no sympathy. Not from here. Not from here. And not from the boss. So I'm going to keep spitting truth. And I pray that the gifts that I have for communication are touching hearts and touching minds. I pray that the boss man and the carpenter kid see fit to let the Spirit speak through me. Oh, it's weird, brief little sidebar. I never feel closer to God than right after I get done lifting. I ain't done with just like, pounded it out the other day. And I always pray after I lift. Because I feel a clarity and a sense and an openness to God right after that. Maybe because it's a near-death experience, the way that I train. I pray. And I never feel closer. I never feel more open. And when I pray, I can literally feel the Spirit speaking through me. Literally feel the Spirit speaking through me. Back to itself. God asking God. Who knows? I can't ponder the complexity of it. I'm just telling you how I feel. Strength. I will continue to spit the truth, man. I will continue to spit the truth. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care the people that I'm going to lose. I don't care the friendships that are going to vanish. I don't care. I thumped my chest a lot and I got very caught up, puffed up in my own ego and head up my own ass about how courageous I was being about speaking the truth no matter where it led me. Till the carpenter kid punked my ass, called me out for a coward. I'm finally listening. I'm listening and I'm trying to let the Son and the Spirit speak through me. I'm going to flag. I'm going to fail. But that's where I'm at. Bart, what does that have to do with anything? I want to close with this. Samson. What do you know about Samson? I was revisiting this over the Thanksgiving holidays again, just doing some reading and some listening and some revisitation of a lot of stuff. Because again, I was raised in the church, but I'm seeing all this stuff with new eyes now. Story of Samson. A lot of lessons can be taken from that. But what do we know about Samson? Samson was strong. Strongest of the Nazarites. One of three, and I know Ryan is going to be able to name the other two. One of three people in the entire scripture whose birth was prophesied by angels. One of only two that was prophesied by angels and birthed from a previously barren womb. Strongest of the Nazarites. That's a pretty big freaking deal, don't you think? But as a Nazarite, his strength came with rules. His strength came with understandings. His strength came with certain covenants, certain demands from the boss. As that kind of power should. Delilah got up in his head. Now, am I going to turn this into a rant about female treachery? No. Because female treachery stands as self-evident. Bart. Bart, bring it. I'm sorry. I can't resist. It wasn't the fact that Delilah got in his head. The lessons that you take from it is lust can cloud your judgment. Men, we know. We've all done stupid stuff for a promise of that toy box. We've all done it. None of us are invulnerable to lust as a motivating factor, as a corrupting factor, as a confusing factor, as a factor that will make us abandon our own sense of self-preservation. This is not about lust. Not in and of itself. It is a lesson about a lack of discernment. Not believing people when they show you who they are. Projecting messianic motivations on people whose motivations are truly Mephistophelian. Messianic, Mephistophelian motivations. Whoa, there's all my college words wrapped up in one. I got like 3 of those. Delilah asked him. As a Nazarite, he could not taste the fermentation of grape. He could not taste. Basically, alcohol was off limits. Alcohol was off limits. And she plied him and said, please, if you love me, tell me what it will take to bind you. And the first thing that he said was it would take, was it uncured bowstrings, I think? Bowstrings for the archers at the time that had not yet been cured. He said, you bind me up with those and I will be powerless. And what happened? He fell asleep, plied him with a little bit of that alcohol, and he woke up tied up in some uncured bow straps. And there were men waiting, hiding in wait. They were going to take him. And what happened? He stood up, tore through the bow straps. Oh, you silly woman. You really bought that? Here's red flag number 1. Why would you do such a thing? You've exposed yourself now. You've exposed yourself. But what happened? He went back. Lack of discernment. In this case, it was guided by lust. But remember that the lesson's about lack of discernment. We let a lot of things make us abandon discernment. And our strength is at risk because of it. Red flag number 2. She said, if you love me, tell me what it is that is the source of your strength. How may we bind you? How may a man bind you? And make you look up. And he said it wasn't uncured bowstrings. It was what, virgin hemp rope, some type of very, very strong, likely hemp-based rope. The second time around. Ryan, you know the story, so fact check. And, Deacon Mark, when you check me, it was bowstrings the first time and like virgin rope the second time, right? Anyway, waited until he was asleep, plied him with a little bit of alcohol, bound him up. He wakes up. People are laying in wait. They're going to take Samson out. They're going to take him down. He gets up, stretches. Oh, man. and like a Marvel superhero just tears right out of the rope. That should have been it, but why he had not seized on his God-given powers of discernment. Why? In this case, lust. We all know, guys. I'm trying to keep the kid filter on and avoid using the foul language, but we all know that toy box. That toy box will make a man do some stupid, right? Particularly a crazy one like Delilah. Ooh, damn, boy. You fold the world in half and wreck your whole life for that kind of toy box, won't you? And he did. Once again, he abandoned discernment. And the third time, she begged, if you really loved me, if you really loved me, if you were truly betrothed to me, you would tell me what the secret is of your strength. And she plied him with some more alcohol. And what did he do? He gave up the secret. He gave up the secret. Because he is a Nazirite, he was forbidden to have his head shorn. It's one of the agreements. No alcohol. Don't cut your hair. Whole list of things. We're going to make you the strongest. We're going to make you the strongest man walking the planet. But I got a few demands. Of course, in this day and age, this generation, you look at it, what do you mean demands? Just make me strong. I deserve it. I deserve it. Just like gimme. Different rant, different ball game, different time. Let's continue, shall we? Samson gave it up. He said, my head has never been shorn. That is the source of my strength. She plied him with alcohol. She shaved 7 locks off his head, shaved them. His strength went away to nothing. And while he was weak, she gouged out his eyes. Men that were laying in wait, they bound him up. Didn't take much now because his strength is gone. His head's been shaved. Now he's been blinded. And they clowned him. They tortured him. They used him like a slave. Samson, strong, the epitome of strength, warrior for God, strongest of the Nazirites, a dude so important, so strong that his birth had actually been foretold by an angel, and he was born from a previously barren womb. That's how badass Samson was. And what happened? He abandoned his sense of discernment. He abandoned his sense of self-preservation. Part of that came from what? You know what I'm saying? You know where I'm going with this. From ego, which is manifested in what? Pride. Look how strong I can be. I can play around with this. I'm the strongest in the Nazarites. It doesn't matter. He abandoned self-preservation. He abandoned all sense of discernment and clarity, and someone who was obviously bent on negative outcomes for Samson, someone it was patently obvious that did not have his best interests at heart. Got away with it not once, not twice, but 3 times, and the third time finally succeeded and brought him down. There is a lesson there. We know. This doesn't apply to my secular friends. Actually, it does. We know what is expected of us. If you are walking in the light of Christ, you know what is expected of us by God. You know what is expected of us by the boss man and the carpenter kid. If you are not walking that path, let's say you are a follower of Asatru, you know the 9 noble virtues. You know how to live right. You know what the gods favor and do not favor. And if you're totally secular, you got a conscience, man. You know what is right. Even on a purely Nietzschean level, everything you feel that is elevating your power is good. Everything you feel that is taking away your power is evil. You know we have that moral compass. But just like Samson, we can be strong. I don't doubt any of the strength of my warrior brethren, my operator brethren, but they've all got at least one story where they abandoned their sense of discernment and self-preservation. They ignored that knot in their guts and they paid for it. It doesn't make them weak. It means they are what? They are human. No matter how much weight I'm moving out here in this garage, no matter how hard I lift, how many rounds I put in on that bag, I know where my vulnerabilities are. I've made no bones about it. What I say about the three of the seven deadlies: lust, pride, wrath. Always, always vulnerable. Always vulnerable. Don't kid yourself and don't give in to arrogance. Don't abandon humility to think that you have no vulnerabilities, because once you abandon humility, abandoning discernment follows immediately behind that. And that is when you are going to find yourself weak. And brother, believe me, you are no Samson. But here's the beauty of it. They kept him on a leash. They kept forcing him to labor. They kept him as an object of torture, an object of ridicule. But all this time, the man's eyes had been blinded. His eyes had been blinded, but his soul still carried the sight. Y'all feel me? Y'all feel me? His eyes had been blinded, but his heart and his soul were still open. And all this time, while they ridiculed him, while they tortured him, while they forced him to labor, while they forced him to do this, forced him to do that, clowned him publicly, made an example of him, what was happening this whole time was that hair was growing back. That hair was growing back. And you think about being Samson. Think about being Samson, blinded, your eyes blinded, trapped in your own head, trapped in your own soul. What do they say? Forget the mistake, but remember the lesson. That's all he had to process. He couldn't even see the outside world around him. He had nothing to do but process that lesson, what that mistake had cost him for years. And all the time while he pondered that lesson, hair was growing back. His strength was building. Y'all feel me? Y'all see where I'm going? Took a blow. A weaker man would have given up. A weaker man would have given up, rolled over, and played dead. But he owned his mistake. He had no choice. You would be stronger if you had volunteered to own that mistake, or better yet, have the discernment not to make it. But he owned it. He owned it. Blinded, left to ponder the lesson of that mistake. And all that time he was pondering that lesson, the hair was coming back and the strength was building, and he felt that power rising within himself. And what happened? What happened, y'all? Came a day where that strength had overwhelmed anything that his captors could hold against him. They lost their sense of discernment and self-preservation, because they thought, yeah, man, okay, warrior of God, most powerful than Nazarites, but we took his eyes. He's nothing. Ooh, how the tables have turned. They abandoned their sense of discernment and self-preservation. They gave him a little too much leeway off that leash, and what happened? He brought the temple down around him, even if it meant his life. He cried out to God and brought the temple down around him. Y'all tracking? The lesson is this: don't let any of those traps. We all know what our weaknesses are. Maybe yours is greed. Maybe yours is sloth. Maybe yours is gluttony. Maybe yours is lust or pride or wrath. It doesn't matter. If you humble yourself, you will see when people do not have your best interest at heart. And sometimes that humility is going to take a look at somebody that you previously thought might have loved you, or might have been your friend, or might have had your best interest at heart, but they are showing you their true colors. Forgiveness is one thing. Ignoring two or more obvious, egregious overreaches with malicious intent, That's abandoning self-preservation. That's abandoning discernment. People will show you who they are when they do make that observation. And when God says, you see that, you look back at the boss man and say, yeah, man, I got it. Don't abandon that discernment. Don't abandon that discernment. Don't ever give up that weakness. But if you find yourself making a mistake and having to pay for it, no matter what it costs you, it won't be your eyesight. They take your power away. You voluntarily give it away, whatever it is. Forget the mistake, but remember the lesson, process it, and use it to build your strength even higher. And don't be like Samson's captors either, assuming that just because you have something that you did not perceive as a threat beaten down and its main power taken away, that it cannot come back to bite you in the ass, because that's an abandonment of discernment as well. But in the end, realize, particularly with the fight that we're going into, with the fight that we got ahead of ourselves, realize that not all of us will get that noble warrior's death. Read your scripture. Not all of us, soldiers of God though we may be, not all of us will have the privilege of dying that warrior's death. Some of us will get to die on the field. Some of us will stand and be publicly martyred, smiling, eyes wide, and calling out to Christ while they cut our throats. Some of us who have made our mistakes, who have abandoned discernment and paid for it, who wind up being shackled, no matter what life has done to us. Some of us will come to that realization. But once we have realized our strength and we have resumed our mantle of the strength that God has bestowed on us, the best that we may be able to hope for is to bring their temples down around us, even if it means our life. I don't know about you, but if that's the way God decides that I need to go out, you do a hell of a lot worse. I'm going to close with a prayer, y'all. Lord God, I thank you for this year. I thank you for the blessings with which you have graced me. In this time of everyone giving thanks, there aren't enough thanks to be given those blessings upon which I've been bestowed. The gift of strength, Lord, the gift of communication, being able to reach out, to touch people's hearts, to touch people's minds. I ask only that you help me to find discernment and clarity. Always ask for discernment and clarity, that I will be able to hear you clearly when you speak to me, that I will be able to let the Spirit speak through me when I am speaking to others, that I will be able to touch hearts and touch minds and bring your children home. For those people who are suffering, known to me or unknown, walking in the light or not, I ask for your mercy and your grace, but I also am reminded, thy will, not mine, be done. Many times, Lord, we lose sight of the fact that suffering and adversity is just as much a part of your divine plan as blessings and glory. And so we abandon and we shun suffering and we avoid adversity. Let us not get caught in that pride. Let us have the humility to accept what comes our way and realize that it is your will, not mine, to be done. I thank you for the blood of your Son, Christ, scourged, tortured, and murdered on that cross to buy redemption for what is, by its very nature, irredeemable. I thank you for your grace and your forgiveness. And I ask that you help me to walk in the light. And in the name of the risen Christ, amen. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel, folks. Appreciate y'all being here. Didn't mean to get too heavy on you, but remember that Samson, yes, still took out a slew of Philistines. Yeah, you knew I was getting there. You knew I was getting there, buddy. Brother. Thank you, Deacon Mark. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Ryan. Thank everybody. Andy, too, man. I didn't expect you to show up. Andy and I got some long history, man. He goes all the way back to high school with me, man. He always keeps it entertaining. I appreciate you guys. I really do. Just for the sake of, I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate. You guys already know. I'm on PayPal. I'm on Cash App. I'm on Venmo. I'm on Facebook Pay. All that good stuff. You want to throw me a little coin if anything I did enriched your life in any possible way, maybe open your eyes a little bit. You want to throw me a little coin, that's fine. It's not mandatory, people. I understand that reluctantly we are still living in a Biden economy, so here we are. But I tell you what you can do, man. If you dig what I have to say, turn somebody else onto the program. Turn somebody else onto the social media feed. Just go, hey, man, this Reverend guy, he's a bit of a handful, man, but he's a like-minded and kindred spirit. I think you dig what he has going on. But above and beyond all that, here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself. Like my brother Stone is always saying, live the 3, baby. Live the 3. 3 prime directives, you guys already know, man. The signal-to-noise ratio is all screwed up these days, man. You got to be the signal that punches through the noise. You got to be that light to break through the darkness. They will try to bury you in the darkness, demoralize you, dehumanize you, emasculate you, have you thinking that there's all that is darkness. You got to be that light to break through the darkness, which leads me to the 3rd rule, the iron rule. You have got to be that strength in a world full of weakness, because without that strength in a world full of weakness, none of the rest of it matters, man. If you don't have the strength, you're not going to have enough to punch through that signal through the noise. Without strength, you're not going to be able to carry that light through all that mud and muck and fog and darkness if you don't have the strength. So above and beyond everything else, be that strength in a world full of weakness. And when I'm talking about strength, man, I'm not just talking about here. I'm talking about here, even here, fellas. Walking in the light of Christ, man, take some strength in your faith and use that faith to build your strength. The two are not mutually exclusive. We don't have to be of the world, but we're still stuck living in the world. And as long as we're going to be here, you better be ready. Because the fight's coming, dude. Knuckles up, baby. Chin down, forehead out, knuckles up. Be ready for it. I love y'all, man. Thank you for everything. Appreciate you guys, man. See you next Sunday. I'm the Reverend. That is the gospel. Live the 3, baby. Live the 3. And like my man, Brother Jeremy Mann says, OGD, baby. Only good days. Only good days. Make today another one. And tomorrow and the next day. I love y'all, man. Take care of yourselves. Peace. I'm the Reverend. We'll see you next Sunday, man. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I love y'all, man.